we're kind of dancing around another paradox, which I feel is really important to mention if you really want to have a more advanced understanding of the challenges we face. Um, I think a lot of people on a superficial level believe that agile means I need less detail,
Yeah.
right? They think, I don't need documentation, it's quick, it's all quick and dirty. And I always tell my clients is that they want to work agile. I said, are you conscious of the fact that agile is actually more work? It's actually I think the biggest flaw of predictive project management is this superficial illusion on a C-suite level that I can write a project charter and maybe a scope statement, and then I have the illusion of granularity. And
Yeah.
you have a work breakdown structure that goes down to a work package, which is the equivalent of a feature or an epic. I'm like, what crack pipe are you smoking? Because it's in the details where the complexity lies, and this is another paradox. I think I don't know, maybe if agile is a little bit the victim of its own marketing. Actually, agile is an absolute advocate of detail, much more than predictive is. I mean, the whole concept of requirements. You guys mentioned that one key element of your DAD is design thinking, right? What is design thinking? It's more than just requirements engineering, but the original focus was, hey, we need to do requirements engineering, and the best way to do that is to include the people who want it, right? If I'm going to make a quick
Yeah.
summary. Um,
Yeah. And I think so we would run into leadership that, believes in this, predictive approach and all this detailed upfront planning. And the first question out of my mouth is always, really, and how well has that worked for you in the past? And the weird thing is
good, because I said it works good.
yeah, well, and, if they're fresh out of, mid-20s, fresh out of school, okay, fine, fantasy world. But come on, if they've been around the block a few times and they still believe this stuff, give me a break, right? And the weird thing is, as soon as I ask that question, I only get bad news. They start bitching about it, or well, I get one of two things: instantaneously, I get bad news because now suddenly we're talking about reality, or I get yet another level of lying, which I then question again. Really, and you thought that was on time? How did you make it on time? Oh, well, we had to cut, 3/4 of our scope. Okay, so that wasn't on time. You only got 1/4 of what you were promised, and you had to do 2 other projects after that to get the rest.
Yeah.
That's clearly not on time. Come on. And so yeah, and then you can start saying, well, wait a minute. So you've never actually seen this work. Why are you still on this treadmill? Because gut feel tells me it's not going to work for you again because nothing's changed here. Oh, well, it'll work this time because all the planets will align. Come on, right? But then they got to go at risk and what they believe to be at risk and start doing the right thing. But the problem is one of extremes, right? Like a very common cultural problem in IT is all this black and white thinking, right? It's very heavily prescriptive, or it's total chaos, free for all. And Agile align themselves with, unfortunately, in many ways, align themselves with the chaotic free for all, which is not what the original intent was. But so DA, we said, well, wait a minute, no, we want to make better decisions, and unfortunately, the problem becomes one of that means you need to be skilled and experienced enough to make decisions, or to know you need to make decisions, and then to make them. And so you can't just hand a cookbook. So a great metaphor Mark came up with was years ago was one of cooking, right? So you don't just hand somebody a cookbook and say, go and make some, a 5-course meal for the family, and they've never cooked before, right? It's their host. Because the Joy of Cooking is a great book, but if you don't know some of the basics of how to cook, if you don't have basic cooking skills, it's going to be hopeless. And so what do when you cook a meal? You go to your cabinet, you pick ingredients, and you make the meal that's appropriate for your family that night. Tomorrow, I'm in the same kitchen using the same tools, same basic ingredients, making a completely different meal, because I can't serve steak and potatoes every single night. My family's going to rebel. right? Once in a while, great, but next night's going to be chicken, and next night's maybe vegetarian or something. But it's not going to be the same thing over and over and over again. And it's the same thing at the project level. It can't be the same thing over and over again because we don't face the same problems. Yeah. Unless you're a consulting firm that all you do is install package X at clients, you're never going to face it. And even if that's true, every client is different anyways, right? So you never get this purely predictable, purely prescriptive thing. We're always in bespoke land. And this is
I think it's, I think the easiest way to understand it is to ask yourself how much of it is bespoke and how much of it is standard. I have one particular client that it works in IT, and they're a very reputable company. So, and all their clients expect them to work agile, but in reality, their deliveries are very predictive. They've been doing it, thousands of times. It's I would say a lot of their projects, you could probably map out the roadmap maybe 70%, and the rest would have to be adapted to the context, right? And I think that's also kind of one of the things you're talking about in your hybrid approach is, and I would say, listen, it's always the question of how much is known, how much is the known unknown, and how much of it is the unknown unknown, and based on that, that's your percentage of hybrid. Is the 80% agile and 20%? Maybe that's too simple in the way I'm putting it, but I think you get the gist of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and so one of the things we did in DA, we had explicit phases, which is a swear word for most agilists, right? And then you see this thrashing in the agile world, where they still argue, is there really a sprint zero or not? Well, sprint zero is a phase, is your project initiation phase.
I like sprint zeros.
Yeah, because you got to get into it. Like, you don't just beam down from the Starship Enterprise and get going. Right? Somebody's got to put the team together. Somebody's got to get some initial funding. You got to do some initial requirements. You got to
do some team building.
Yeah, you got to get going in the right direction, right? So let's be good at that. Let's not just start going. Let's do a little bit of thinking up front and get going in the right direction and dramatically reduce the risk of the project. Or the product team, is the case may be, right? And let's make it explicit. Let's get good at that, right? Because if you're not good at it, you're going to make mistakes. And I think a lot of the reason why the agile communities got into trouble was they believed their own rhetoric. Like earlier we're talking about failing fast, and there's some good things about failing fast. It's certainly better than failing slowly, but it's still failing. And why would you run it? And so you get these people who are on stage and they're shooting their mouths off about, we run experiments and we experiment with a technique and we fail fast. And we say, what a spectacularly stupid thing to do. If you have no clue what you're doing, then that's pretty good. But if you know what you're doing, it's like, well, wait a minute. I don't need to, let's juggle chainsaws, right? That's not a good idea. You can experiment with that and you're going to fail fast, I guarantee it. But you're going to fail. You don't really need to fail with I can tell, it's pretty obvious that juggling chainsaws
and you guys talk about that. It would slip past the unobservant reader, but you actually talk about, that's one of the paradoxes, that you have to be open and flexible. But on the other hand, you don't, there's some legitimate experience is legitimate, right? I think the Bismarck's quote, there's a Bismarck quote that said, smart people learn from their own mistakes. Really intelligent people learn from others, right?
Yeah. And
you don't have to make every damn mistake that everybody